Welcome to the Saint and the Singer,
I'm the saint.
and I'm the singer, and I'm pretty sure you are Dayquil drunk and I'm punch drunk.
I haven't taken any Dayquil, but my head is just full, and it's
Yeah.
not full with, God and
Knowledge.
scripture knowledge. It's
Wisdom.
full with snot and allergies. Because the Ozarks feels like it should be,
What are we-
late April.
What are we doing, Ozarks? Like,
It's bipolar.
really?
The Ozarks are off their meds.
What are we doing? What was it? Nearly 70 today?
Yeah, and it was what, like 40 just a couple days ago, and
Yeah. If you're listening to this in the future, hi, people of the future, but it's February the 25th, and it was nearly 70 today.
and I was wearing short sleeve shirt and walking around just fine.
Yeah. What are we doing? So, we missed last week because of you and your weak immune system,
I actually haven't been sick that much this year.
your man cold, man flu.
I did have the man flu.
Did
Yeah.
you have the man flu? Well, I was kind of glad you did because I didn't feel it either. I wasn't
You
feeling
just want to use me as the excuse,
Yeah,
though?
yeah,
Okay.
you could be the bad guy.
Yeah. That's why I'm a saint and you're a singer.
Yeah, most of the time that G probably doesn't belong there. But anyway,
Nice.
yeah. So you were sick.
I was sick.
I was tired. We were sick and tired. That should be
that should be our new. That's our next one. We'll be sick and tired.
sick and tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sick. He's tired.
I mean it fits. Well, that's enough of that. So, like I said, it's February the 25th. We have been talking in church for the last. This will be 4 weeks.
Yep.
This week, which I'm gonna miss.
Slacker.
Yeah, I know, loser.
You will be tired.
I will definitely be tired, and you might still be sick. But we've been talking about prayer, and I kind of wanted to talk about some of the things maybe that we have learned during this, or that we've been challenged by
Okay.
during this study.
I like that.
What's something that you have learned in this study?
Well, okay, this is kind of an interesting one. So I learned from talking to God
Okay.
that the early church read the Lord's Prayer 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
That was, and it was even in the Didache, and it was very interesting how early, going back to like within the first or second century, they were, religiously and ritualistically reciting that prayer at morning, noon, and dusk.
Which I did not know that as well. And that doesn't really jive with my understanding, maybe my prior understanding, let's say, of the church's attitude on rote prayer. Because
Yeah.
I feel like there's some stuff in the New Testament that's kind of anti-rote prayer. And I know it's regarding the Pharisees and how
Sure.
they like to use vain repetitions and rote prayers and stuff, but I'm not sure I've been able to like suss out the difference.
Yeah, and I've had to kind of struggle with that too a little bit because I came from the kind of the same background that the Lord's Prayer was just an outline
Right.
for us to use. But when I really started doing some research, the rabbinical training, the rabbis would all have their own prayer that their disciples would use, and that was kind of a calling
Like a
card.
calling card,
You
yeah.
know, so John the Baptist, and this is why they mentioned, well, John the Baptist has, taught his disciples to pray.
Right.
So would you do that? Because there was a John the Baptist prayer.
Right.
And so then Jesus says, okay, here's my formulaic, rote prayer that you can do. And there's purpose in all of this.
Right.
And there is a deeper meaning in this. But here's what I want you to say. Our, Dad, who is in heaven, holy is your name. And then going down that line. And I thought that was really interesting. Like, okay, so Jesus was telling them, you guys want to formulate prayer? Here's my formulaic prayer. But it's going to rock your socks because it's so different from everybody else's.
Yeah. And so, my opinion of such stuff has been that we have a tendency to do we memorize these things and we read them enough or say them enough that we just get on autopilot and we're
Yeah.
not really paying attention to what we're saying. We're just parroting off words.
That is the struggle.
That does cause me to kind of rethink some of that, because I did not know that as well, that each rabbi kind of had his style prayer that each one of his disciples would learn, and like you said, it's their calling card. So if they were out and about and everybody's praying, you can almost know who studied under whom.
They follow
by
Galenius
what
and they
they're-
follow
yeah,
Jesus,
by
and
what
this one
they're
follows
praying.
John the Baptist. Yeah.
Because that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was something
cool.
that was really that kind of shocked me a little bit. I'm like, huh, okay, that kind of flipped the prayer scripture, script for me a little bit. That I've really kind of had to process and think, okay, how does this change for me now? I am not doing the Lord's Prayer 3 times a day. I haven't gotten to that point. I'm not saying that I wouldn't. But I think it has allowed me to kind of change how I view on Sunday mornings when we end the Lord's Prayer. The last few weeks, I've looked at that differently. Not so much as okay, this is just what traditional church has done, versus now, no, this is something that I want to do. So my heart attitude has changed a little bit from this. And so I thought that was kind of an important thing. And I think it's important to note that what I liked in that sermon, the first three lines of that prayer are orienting ourselves into the proper perspective.
Who we're talking to.
Yeah, remember you are the worm and he is the creator.
Yeah.
You are the fault, the rebellious. You are sinful, you are broken. He is perfect.
Putting the relationship into perspective
Yeah.
immediately. Yeah.
But then afterwards, then you ask for your stuff. You ask for your physical needs, you ask for your sinful spiritual needs, and you ask for protection. I think sometimes we just jump right into praying for the last 3 parts.
Yeah.
And we skip the first 3 parts. We say, "Dear Jesus" or "Dear God," so we're trying to get some of that holiness kind of, and then we just jump right into.
Well, and see that's where I have my own little struggle of like doing that, but not sounding like you're doing these vain repetitions and these flourishing words. So it's like it's almost like the Pharisees were maybe even accused of flattery in some sort of ways, but it was half-hearted, or it was for to be seen.
Right.
So
that's
like
the key.
when we're trying to adore, express our adoration, like I want to do, I want to come up. I was telling my wife the other day, it's like I've been trying to write you a real love song since before we got married. We've been married for this will be 25 years coming up, and I try to write her a song every year, and I just can't do it because everything that comes out is not sufficient to express actually how deep my love is for you and how I feel about you. It's very frustrating not to be able to do that, and then to point that towards God. If you want to show the adoration and the depths of your heart, but then you also have to remember not to go on too much, because you may start sounding pompous and arrogant and flattering. There's just this weird balance.
I don't think the flattery part was the problem. I think the problem was their heart attitude. They didn't really believe what they were saying.
That's what I'm getting at, is like, what's the motivation behind that? Is it pure?
Well, and I think we say, when we're like, God, you are, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Risi, Jehovah, Rapha, Elion, whatever names you want to use. Huh?
Never mind.
No,
I said
Elion.
Jehovah Johnson.
Jehovah Johnson. No. Not sure what that one is.
Yeah, don't ask. This is dumb.
When we really recognize when we're declaring that's a different heart attitude, and I think that's what matters. The Pharisees didn't really believe what they were saying, for the most part. They were doing it because of power and things like that, and they were getting their rewards on earth,
right?
As Jesus was talking about. So, yes, was it rote prayer? Yes, but were they doing? You could do a rote prayer and still have a sincere heart. You can do a heartfelt prayer and not have the right heart also. It can be all the great flowery words,
Sure.
but at the end of the day, as Paul says, without love, you're just a sounding gong.
Yep. Okay.
And so
Have you tried the practice of praying through the Lord's Prayer? Like actually using it as a template. Did you see any of the exercises? So there's like a 10-minute.
I skipped all the exercises.
Did you?
I'm like,
Okay.
Because I was
There's
trying
like
to write the sermons, but
there's
yes.
a 10-minute
Yeah.
or so exercise of literally praying through the Lord's Prayer.
I have looked
which
at it
I thought
before,
was pretty
but-
cool.
Yeah, and I do a variation of that a little bit because I have kind of, and sometimes I've been, I've taken the beauty of the Lord's Prayer in Old English, and I've kind of modernized it for myself and kind of gone through it. So I'll be like, okay, Dad, here's the thing, you are way holier than I can, and so there's almost like for me, it's a modern vernacular, which has kind of been kind of cool to kind of go through, but to hit on those things,
Yeah, where it comes like to forgive us our trespasses, and then you sit there and
Forgive me of this one and this
for
one and this one and this one.
as I forgive those. who
As I forgive this
trespass
person, this
against
person,
me.
this person, and this person.
Yeah, and on like it takes about 10 minutes
yeah.
to get through it.
Sure.
if you do it right. And I've done it a couple of times. I'd kind of like to do that some more too because it was pretty interesting. If you think about, at kind of at the beginning of this conversation, you said, we sometimes we do this part and this part so well, but we don't do the other. Well, this practice allows you to basically stop at each point and fill in the blanks. So, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And then you tell God what are some things that cause you to be in awe of him.
Yeah.
What some of the things you love about God. Or
What's the name character that you resonate
and then,
with?
Give us this day our daily bread. Talk about our needs, and really pretty cool. And I think that would be kind of a fun exercise to do sometime.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot that we can get from just starting with the idea of Jesus's prayer life, But what I like about though is that then right after that, in that same passage in Luke, he talks about, okay, now keep knocking.
Yeah.
He talks about the annoying neighbor, asking, hey, I need bread. And I always kind of thought that was kind of funny. Like, am I supposed to badger God? I mean, it sounds like, but
Till he like rolls his eyes and
it's like,
gets out of
okay,
bed,
I'm going
walks
to roll
up-
out of bed.
walks to the door in his bathrobe and says, "What do you want?"
Just take the darn bread and go.
Get outta
Go
here.
back to sleep.
Yeah.
But when you start to understand the idea of how much more, so if you could annoy your buddy enough to get bread, how much more will happen if you just ask your Heavenly Father, who is perfect? You're not annoying him, but then that idea taking that, so we go from talking to God, now we're talking with God. And this is where we really start to unload what we're really feeling.
Yeah.
This is the gratitude. This is the lament. This is where you open up your deepest, darkest wounds and say, okay, God, I am broken. I am angry. I am, so grieving, so sorrowful, whatever, so confused. Here is all of those emotions, and I'm placing them at your feet. I'm trusting you with that. That's what lament is, and that's a huge and powerful prayer. And in my season, I've really starting to understand lament better than I ever had before.
Yeah.
I was, because I guess in my own head, I was like, I kind of thought that lamenting was kind of just whining and being baby. I just don't feel right, God, but I'm getting to the point where like, no, that's exactly what God wants, though. And then when you read many of the Psalms, about 2/3 of the Psalms
big
are
portion.
lamenting prayers,
Yeah.
and that really, that kind of recognition and that, has allowed me to kind of think, okay, lament is important. And then I never had problem with petition and intercession. We never had problems praying for,
Right.
I need this
other,
God, or I need,
right, yeah.
prayer for my brother here or whatever. But getting the gratitude and the lament down has been growing in me too.
Yeah, and the lament. So, I had never looked. I mean, I'm kind of the same way of you on the lament. I usually thought of lamenting as being, and it is in some respects, for lack of a better word, complaining about my circumstances. That's not the right way to look at it, but just from a real plain form of speech, complaining to God about my circumstances, and maybe asking for some guidance or asking why is this why am I having to endure this? I kind of think about Paul talking about how he spoke with God about the thorn in his flesh, and God said, this is sufficient. My grace is sufficient for you, and you'll be showing my strength through your weakness, and all of that sort of stuff. But lamenting is also, in a broader sense, it's lamenting about the circumstances of the world around us.
Right.
So, am I grieved by my sin? Am I grieved by the sin in the world around me? Am I grieved by the loss of the 2 sheriff's deputies in
Right.
Christian County down the road from us? Am I lamenting the fact that guy also lost his life really for no reason? All that was kind of pointless. And am I lamenting the state of our world?
Yep.
And the sin of our world? I mean, if you're not paying attention to what's going on in the world right now, then you don't. I don't know what to tell you, but we should be lamenting about Epstein, the government, potential war,
the rape culture,
what's going on everywhere in the world, basically around us. I was trying to think. There was I think it's Hosanna. Anyway, one of the bridges of one of the songs we sing from time to time just says, break my heart for what breaks yours. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure we could actually handle that if we knew all that breaks God's heart.
Sure.
But that, to me, that's the lamentation is, yes, it's very appropriate for you and I to question God and speak to God about how we feel about our circumstances, but it also is broader than that.
Yeah. That's you bring that up because that was my my email that went out yesterday. I was kind of having this kind of thought, how, and I read the news in the morning, and I heard it was just one devastating story after it was.
Yeah, the last couple of days have been rough in the world.
It has. I mean, one of the stories I read was the cops, in New York that were getting snowballs thrown at them by punk kids. I'm like, really? And then there was the one where in Britain where a young woman came forward and talked about her, life from 12 years old on, where she was being repeatedly raped by men, many men, including police officers, that were taking her and hiding her in their police car and transporting her across the city to other places for years. Then there was the situation with the 2 officers in Christian County, and just over and over and over, the person that drove their ambulance into the stolen ambulance and drove it into the ICE and DHS building with gasoline. I'm like, we have lost our ever loving mind. But the truth is, the world has always been broken. I think we are now seeing the effects of what happens when we are in a post-Christian culture.
When life means nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the call for us then is to be on our knees, lamenting and interceding in that prayer, because that is how we are going to spread the kingdom of God. And so I am making a conscious effort every day for a couple of minutes at least to say, Lord, I'm praying for the state of the world. I'm praying for how I personally can make a positive impact on the world around me. I'm not going to be able to fix the gang shootings going on in Puerto Vallarta right now. But can I make a difference in, my neighborhood, or the person that comes in, that's broken and like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills this week. Yeah, I can make a difference there. Yeah. So, and that's all the world for that person. But I do think we're also called to be praying that, okay, God, we as the Big C church have to spread the kingdom of heaven, and we are in a battle, and we fight our battle on our knees.
Yeah. So what about the...
I got a little passion there, sorry.
Yeah, I like it. Now let's bring it down a little bit to what I find to be the funny part.
Okay.
So we've talked about all the talking to and talking with God.
Okay. we moving on to being with God?
How about the listening to God and being with God? How does that go for you? Because I'll tell you, that's another thing that has really That's bothered me for years, but it's really bothered me, during this study that I just don't seem to be able to do it. Like, I think I was telling you, I'll tell you the condensed version here. Like, recently I've been trying to do this. Was it It's a mixture of contemplative prayer and imaginative prayer, where instead of praying to God, you imagine yourself in the presence of God, and essentially you're both just enjoying each other's presence. So there doesn't need to be any words or thoughts exchanged. It's just, I'm enjoying being in the presence of God, and God is enjoying being in the presence of me, and we're just
And how's that going for you?
feeding off of one another. I would say it's going less than amazing,
Okay.
because, as many of you know, and I know you know, I'm a bit of an overthinker.
What?
So
Spoiler alert.
I feel like I have to prepare a room in my head for God to show up in, and it has, the lighting has to be right, the seating positions have to be right, and then I have to figure out how I'm going to spend my time being in the presence of God. Is He sitting across from me and we're looking at each other, or are we sitting next to each other like this, or how do we do that? And by the time I have obsessed about how I want to do this, my brain is going in my head, and then it's on to the next problem. And I'm might be spending 5 seconds at a time with the Lord of the universe, and then I'll go, oh no, you got to get your butt back in there and get this done. And I'll get back in there and start the whole thing over again, and then a picture from the Epstein files will come into my head, and I'll have to obsess about all the things that I wish I could do to those people. And then I go, no, that's not what we're here to do. We're here to do this. And then I think about, what the camping trip and fishing trip we got coming up, or, I got to go get the tags on the camper. I got to do this. I got to do this. And before I know it, I've spent 30 minutes just trying to get into the room in my head to be alone with God. And it never works.
Okay.
Yes, I am neurotic.
Why does the room matter?
It doesn't matter.
But it does to you because you obsess over it.
Well, why does it matter? Maybe it's because I just don't have a category for understanding how to just be alone with something. So what I want to do, kind of like what I was saying with the love song for my wife, is that I would like for the appreciation or the adoration to be apparent and obvious and sufficient, and prepping the scene sort of. Well, it'd be like you got to clean the house before you got company,
so
right?
here's my thing. So
I don't know.
I get that. I get that.
I don't know the answer to this.
Well,
I don't know it, but I do. It's like cleaning the house before you got company.
Yeah, I
This is the
get
way I'm
that.
gonna say
Now,
that.
but here's the thing, though. This isn't company. This is Jesus.
No,
so
I
this
get
would be
it.
like, do you clean the house when I come over?
Yeah,
Not really a whole lot. I just pop in.
you'd be surprised.
I'm sure you do. You try to get all the dog hair off.
No,
but,
yeah, that never works. But
yeah, I know.
the dog
But-
hair particularly.
So here's my thing, though. If you think about your most happy place, it is not in a room.
No, it's not.
It would be sitting around a campfire.
I would.
So why not envision that for your time with Jesus?
I may try that. Yeah.
And I'm just saying, you're trying to make the perfect situation, and that's not how that works.
Trying really hard not to relate it to some sort of sexual encounter. Where
I get
where
that.
the room
You are
has
the
to-
bride of Christ, but that's not what that means.
Where the lighting has to be just right, and the temperature of the room has to be just
some
right.
Barry
the
Manilow playing in the
music
background.
in the background.
Yeah, you don't have to do that. No.
Flower petals leading.
Yeah, let's. Yeah, no. Save that.
It's a
Save that one
mess.
for your wife,
It's a
not for
mess in
Jesus.
it's a mess in there. I'm
I
telling
get
you.
it. I get that.
But I don't.
You look deeply into his eyes.
Okay, I mean, there was a part of that conversation that went something like that, and I was like, okay, that's. I try to imagine, is that what would happen if you were in a room alone with God and you weren't speaking? Would you be, just staring at each other lovingly, or would you be cuddled up on the settee together, and he's comforting me and telling me that everything's right? Or are we sitting around a campfire sipping whiskey and talking? But we're not supposed to talk. We're just supposed to be enjoying one another's company. And yes, I know this sounds insane, and I'm sorry.
You know, I'm not sure that I would look into the face of Jesus with love so much as just sadness that disappointment. Like I didn't do enough.
Yeah, but that's not the point of this exercise.
I get that, but I'm just saying that
that's why it's so hard.
Right? I know.
Because I would be the same way. It's like, I know I'm not worthy to be in this room.
But I think that's the start, because once we figure that out, then that's where Jesus comes. Okay, just be with me. You're right. You're not worthy. You're right. Sean is not worthy to be in my presence, but I want you there anyways.
Right.
And I think that, like, you think about that, if I make a friend with somebody and that friend is out of my league, maybe
me.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Sure
you're like, why do you want to be my friend? And they're like, I want to be your friend because you are you. And I think that that's where you start to understand that. Yeah. And so, yeah, for me, I wouldn't care so much about what the room looks like. I'm gonna go to where my happy place would be, and that would be probably, like I said, sitting by a fire. I think just sitting by a fire, I don't have to say anything. We can just sit by the fire and just know that we're in contemplative, like when we're hanging out around the campfire, we don't have to talk.
No, but see, here's my neurosis. Like, if we're going and sitting by a fire, I'm just gonna stare at the fire and go, ooh, or pretend, go to all of my happy places, right? Where are my happy places? On the lake.
Yeah.
So I'm watching for fish. I ain't sitting there looking at God or sitting in the woods. I'm watching for wildlife. I mean, my brain.
Sure, I get that.
It just squirrels out on me, and I'm having a hard time. What it really comes down to is I'm having a hard time focusing.
Right.
And that, I think that's just really part of how my head works
in
general.
On the training that I was watching about John Mark Comer on this one, he made a comment that was really interesting. He said, and I don't remember who said it. He quoted somebody, but they said that, yeah, you're going to get distracted. That's okay. Think about it this way. You just learned another way you get to come back to the face of God.
Yeah.
Again and again, you get to come back to the face of God. Yeah. And that's what you have to. So yeah, the distractions will happen no matter what. You cannot, unless you're living a monastic lifestyle without electronics and without, if your whole job is simply to, rewrite the script, scriptures, you're going to get distracted. Yeah. Even they are going to get distracted about stuff. Yeah.
Well, and I've got almost 50 years experience of not doing this.
Sure.
And so, it's kind of like the fasting deal. Starting that, you have some real ups and downs, and then the longer you do it, the easier it gets. And I'm hoping the longer I attempt this, the easier it's going to get. Because now it's really frustrating. It's like it reminds me of Jesus in the garden, kind of yelling at his disciples, "Man, you guys couldn't stay awake for 1 hour and pray with me, bro." And it's like, you can't stay in the room with me for 5 seconds without moving on to something else. And
you are below a goldfish,
dude.
But I'm right there with you.
It's frustrating.
It is hard.
Like this is one of the more frustrating things about my spiritual life. If I'm just being completely honest, I don't have a real issue with reading and hopefully at least fairly well understanding what I'm reading. I don't really have that hard of a time with prayer. I mean, we're all inconsistent. We're never going to be perfect, but I've got a pretty good prayer life. I've got quite a bit of wisdom and knowledge and some self-control under practice right now. But I have never been able to master the silence or the solitude. Sure. Or the focusing on God when it really counts.
That one's hard for me too, because I have a little bit of ADHD anyways, and so the running monologue in my head there's hardly silence.
It never stops.
And it's hard for me to do that. And that's where I have to I can remember last night when I was praying, at bedtime. I was praying. I probably prayed for, 15 seconds. And then it was like, all of a sudden, my mind took a giant turn to the right, and it was like going down this kind of, story in my head. I'm like, wait.
My
I'm
rooftop tent's
praying.
coming,
And I bring it back. Okay. And Lord, I'm going to pray for And then all of a sudden it was like this way. I'm like, oh, good grief.
Yeah.
I'm praying, and to try and bring and finally I'm like, okay, God, I love you and good night.
Yeah.
I'll see you in the morning,
Yeah.
but I have to, even as, being a Christian for 30 some odd years, 5 years, I still have to draw in and return back to those.
Yeah.
So I get that. But
Yeah,
that contemplative prayer, especially when you're in imaginations, I could see why that would be problematic even for me.
Yeah.
But
see, here's what's frustrating about it. I can imagine anything else. Like, I'm a creative. So I'm all the time imagining things, coming up with scenarios in my head, coming up with all this great stuff. I just can't do it there.
Well, no, you get great stuff, but the problem is that you're adding in too many things.
I'm not.
And so you're missing the purpose.
Exactly.
You're trying to be so creative.
It's like I get it.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you went to perfect setting.
I get it.
I think it's okay. I think just make it simple. Like you're just sitting. I still think you should do like the couch. You're laying on the couch and like the psychiatrist.
He's got the notebook.
He's just taking notes.
He goes, I don't need you to do this, but tell me about your mother. I already know her, but tell me about her anyway. Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, I mean, when we first got into this study, I was like, okay, prayer. Are we going to learn anything in this? But
I thought it was going to be 2 weeks.
It's been full of some really good thought processes for me, and some ways to rethink some stuff that I've held on to for too long. I was trying to think. There was one more thing that was, well, I mean, you kind of hit on it a minute ago, or we kind of hit on it a minute ago with the continue knocking, continue seeking,
Yes.
continue asking. That's Jesus telling us that your prayers do matter.
Right.
So when you are doubting as whether or not God's hearing your prayers, or whether or not God cares what you're saying or hears what you're saying, Jesus himself is telling you that your prayers do matter.
Right.
And in some form or fashion changes God's mind about something potentially.
Well,
I mean that's kind of hard for me to say out loud.
I think that what God does is he's allowing us. I think he's drawing us in to be a part of his work. So God doesn't need us to pray. God wants us to pray because it allows us to have a hand in the work that he is doing. Mm-hmm. He didn't need to be reminded by Moses,
Moses and Abraham.
Yeah. Because he was still going to do all of that. But he wanted Moses and he wanted Abraham and he wanted them to come in and say, okay, join with me in what I'm doing. You have a part in this.
Yeah.
So I think that's what prayer is. Prayer is an opportunity for us to take a part in the spreading of the kingdom of heaven here on earth.
I thought it was interesting, and I'm probably about to contradict everything I just said.
Oh, great.
Because I did think it was interesting. They were talking about on the podcast, on the Rule of Life podcast, about this. They were talking about Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah. Mm-hmm. And one of the gentlemen on there is from Africa.
Yes.
And they were talking about that interchange, or the exchange between God and Abraham, about, what Abraham expected was to go to God and say, if I can find 100 righteous people, will you save the city? And he was going to expect God to say 110. And then he would say 90. And then God would say 100. And that they were going to do this bartering negotiation sort of thing. But what God said was, okay, can I find 40? Okay. What if I find 20? Okay. So maybe I'm contradicting myself, but was
No.
that all part of God's plan anyway? Was just to see how far Abraham would take it,
Well,
or did Abraham influence God's decision? Because there wasn't really a back and forth. It
Well,
was
no,
just
because
like,
at the
okay,
end of the day, Sodom and Gomorrah still got destroyed.
right.
God knew exactly how many people were there. So even though
He knew that no matter how many
yeah.
Abraham.
So what he
said,
was getting
wasn't
down
gonna
to,
find
really,
them.
what Abraham wanted to save wasn't the whole town. He wanted to save Lot
Yeah,
and his family.
yeah.
And so God knew that, and so God was letting Abraham get to that moment.
Get to that point.
But God was still praying. Abraham was still praying. Will you save my nephew? Yes, I will. If he does exactly this, he will be saved.
Okay.
That's why the angels came, and then then Lot brought them in, and
Yeah.
because Lot was still trying to be righteous. Now Lot was connected a little too closely to the world, as noted by his daughters, and what they did afterwards. But yeah, I think that God is drawing us in, not for His purpose, but for ours.
So when we're praying for something for ourselves or someone, and it's not being answered the way that we think it's supposed to be answered, or we're not hearing anything.
Mm-hmm.
What's our plan?
Well, you got to understand that there's multiple things that are going on. First, yes, God wants to bless you. Wait, something's not ready. Either you're not ready, there's a person around you that's not ready. God is waiting for that perfect moment to be the best blessing of all. And that's my least favorite of all, is the wait. And then the other one is, no, I have something better for you. What you want isn't what's really the best. And we have to understand, I believe that God is more concerned with our eternal salvation than our earthly happiness and our earthly contentment. So he would rather us have eternity with him than to have pleasures and I'm not saying he's not opposed to us having comfort down here.
Sure.
But that's not his primary concern. He doesn't care about my happiness. He cares about my spiritual health. And so sometimes what I think is going to make me happy is not best for my spiritual health.
Right.
So he tells me no, because what I've got is better for you.
Right.
This is a better blessing.
What if we're praying for someone to be healed of cancer and they're not?
We can't see the full picture. And I will tell you, for my own, situation with my son, I will ask God, I want to see the full picture now. So why did you take Finn? I believe that there is a blessing that will come from this. Now that I'm standing in heaven in front of you, can I see the full picture? And I'll be able to see all of the lines and connections and the reasons. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that because we serve a good Father, that he has a good plan. And yeah, I mean, in my earthly mind, no, I think that was a horrible idea, but I can't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
So I believe that when I'm standing before him, he's going to show me, reveal that whole thing to me, and I'll be able to say, okay, now I know exactly what you were doing, God. And I say, thank you. So I can thank him now in gratitude.
Yeah.
Knowing with the hope that I will get to see that at the end.
And I believe we're seeing pieces of that now.
I believe we are, absolutely.
Around here. I don't think we'll see the full picture.
No, I don't think we will see the full picture.
We've been seeing stuff around here the last few months that I think is directly related to that in some way or another. And that's going to bring some healing to some people that I don't think would have gotten it otherwise. And, would we have rather have had that happen some other way? Obviously, yes. But
God is good.
God uses, evil.
Yeah.
Let's say evil or bad things that happen. He can still use those for his purpose. And I think he's used you and Megan and your kids and your church to soften hearts for,
I would agree,
within 100-mile radius of this town.
I would totally agree with you.
I don't know that God thought one of these days this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to force this situation in, and then this is what's going to happen.
No,
I think that some random bad stuff really happened, but God says, I'm going to take this and I'm going to impact that person who saw what they saw. And that person who lived over there and saw what they saw, and this person who's reading Sean and Megan's posts on Facebook, and that purpose is gonna be met through that. And so I agree.
We are seeing glimpses of it
I
now.
agree with you. It's just hard to remember that in the middle of it, and to understand why some people get an immediate healing and some don't, and that's really not for us to know, so to speak. But it does weigh on you sometimes.
But it comes down to, do you trust that God is a good God?
Yeah.
That is the foundational thing. Even when the prayer that you pray fervently, you ask and ask and ask, isn't answered the way you want.
One of the best things I heard on the podcast was this lady, and she was talking about how they were praying and praying and praying, and she couldn't have children, and they prayed and they prayed and prayed, couldn't have children. And she was seeing other people being healed, and then she sat and held her best friend's hand as she took her last breath, and she was very distraught and discouraged by the fact that she didn't see God working the way she thought she should be seeing God work. And I think I've told this story about how one of my songs came from an argument with God that sounded pretty similar to this. And he said, well, you do remember that my son prayed for me all night, or prayed to me all night to have the cup removed from him, and I said no to that. Mm-hmm. And she's like, well, I guess if no's good enough for Jesus, I guess it had better be good enough for me too.
Amen to that.
And so I was like, even God incarnate, or God's son, however you want to look at Jesus, got a no from God.
Right.
And so even the King of the universe,
not today,
did not get all of his prayers answered the way he wanted them. So
that's
pretty comforting to remember that we do serve and love a God who knows exactly what we're going through, even at our worst times. So we're about to run out of ones and zeros.
We are.
Very quickly, actually.
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to say before we bump out of here?
Keep praying. Keep practicing with it.
Pray. And if you have any prayer requests you would like for us to address, go to the Facebook page, and I'll put "How Can We Pray For You" on the Facebook page.
Perfect.
And if you've got a Facebook page or got a prayer for us, throw it out there. We'd love to pray for you and with you as we go through this wild and crazy life together. This has been the Saint and the Singer.
I'm the Saint.
And I'm the Singer. And I guess we'll see you next time if we're not debilitated from happening this weekend.
We're sick or tired.
Sick and tired, yeah. We're here to
pump you up.
Get through life. We'll talk to you guys later. Thank y'all.